Okay, good morning or afternoon, everyone. This is Mark Hamlin here, and today we're going to go through a little bit on scheduling in Business Central, primarily visual scheduling, and a little bit of automated scheduling today. Because what we really want to focus on now is really the scheduling aspect of this. And what that is, when we're talking about production or manufacturing, it's more than just scheduling. There's a whole bunch of stuff you need to do. So I'm going to cover off a few of the apps that we have available for manufacturing and scheduling. So the first one here that you see is our enhanced planning pack. So this is really happening before you get to the scheduling side of things. This is where you're doing forecasting, or you're doing your MRP and your purchase planning and things like that. So we've got a lot of tools in there to help you with that planning. And then once the production is done, there's a lot of tools for analysis as well, checking your actuals versus expected, your variability in your processes, your the variance in your production order, costing, components, labor, all that kind of stuff. We've got all those tools in that enhanced planning pack. And typically, what you do is you plan all your product, whether you're using this or the standard Business Central planning tools. You'll create those production orders, and then you'll need to be able to schedule those production orders. For standard Business Central, they'll use the due date. In other words, the shipment date on the sales order, or the forecast date, or whatever it is, and it'll backwards schedule and give you, sort of a schedule, but it's not a realistic schedule. So what we want to do after we've generated those production orders with sort of the default dates and everything else, is we want to actually start, organizing that for the shop floor. And then for that, we have two options. One is the Graphical Scheduler. This is the free tool. So you can plug this in if you're on Business Central Cloud. You plug it in, and you can start using it immediately. And the default is it works with production orders, allows you to visualize your production orders, drag and drop them to reschedule and move them to different work centers and machine centers, all of that kind of stuff. And it's just there. You can use it, and you're done. Simple as that. You can also use that to do more than just production orders. So you could do assembly orders or jobs or any custom table you might have within Business Central. So it's not just for production. You can actually use it for everything. And it's also good calendar views. If you wanted to, show a calendar view of all your CRM tasks or something like that, you could actually do that with a Graphical Scheduler. It's highly configurable, highly customizable, and you can make it do anything. But for the purposes of this conversation, really, you fire it up. Here's all your production orders. You visualize them, you drag and drop them, you do whatever you want with them, and you're off to the races. Now that works great if you don't have a high volume of production orders. But if you start building up a lot of production orders and the standard Business Central scheduling isn't really cutting it for you, I don't want to sit there at this Graphical Scheduler and spend half my day dragging and dropping and moving things around and manually analyzing what the heck is going on. I don't need that pain. I got better things to do with my day. So instead of using the Graphical Scheduler, or technically it's in addition to using the Graphical Scheduler, what I would do is use MXAPS. And MXAPS is the automated production scheduling. In other words, all I do is I say, give me a schedule that we can actually execute in the shop floor starting today or tomorrow morning or whatever it is. It'll generate that schedule far better than any human is going to be able to do it, and present that, and you're good to go. So you may not even want to look at that schedule. You hit a button, say, give me my schedule, pops out, and you're done. Or like a lot of our customers, you don't even hit a button. It just runs in a job queue, 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. or whatever your period is, schedules all your production orders, and the people on the shop floor work to that schedule, and you're done. Simple as that. And that works for smaller companies. Maybe you've only got 20 production orders outstanding at a time, or up to billion-dollar companies that are actually using this to schedule massive amounts of production that you would never be able to do manually. Okay, so those are the two tools that we have available for scheduling. We're going to cover up both of those, but our focus is initially on the Graphical Scheduler. Now, once we've scheduled everything, we send it to the shop floor. We need to capture the information back from the shop floor to feed back into our scheduler so that we can, react appropriately to what happened. Did the machine go down? Did they not finish the work that was scheduled for them? Whatever. So that shop floor insight, it's optional. You can use the production journal or consumption output journals, whatever you want, to record, what's happening on the shop floor. But this allows us to get that real-time feedback and more accurate and timely data that we can then use to improve our scheduling performance. Okay, so again, optional, but very handy to be able to capture that real-time data. Now, after we've done the manufacturing side, we need to get that stuff out the door. So technically, these last few aren't manufacturing, but you kind of need them. If you're manufacturing things, you got to get them out the door. So we have this thing called the order fulfillment worksheet, which plans what you're able to ship today, and tells you your availability and what you can get out the door, and then automatically creates all your warehouse documents and shipping documents to get that stuff out the door. And then you can use Warehouse Insight or the WMS Express that I mentioned earlier to actually go pick that product, get it out the door, all of that kind of stuff as well. And Warehouse Insight, incidentally, can also do manufacturing, so it can do consumption and output on a handheld device or tablet or something like that as well. And then finally, once we've planned what we're shipping out and picked it and everything, you can use Dynamic Ship or Order Ship Express to get that product out the door. Dynamic Ship does a lot more than Order Ship Express. Again, Order Ship Express is free, and it does domestic parcel shipments. Dynamic Ship will do international, do LTL, full truckload, parcel, all of that kind of stuff. Very comprehensive shipping solution to get your stuff out the door. But really, what we want to focus on are the scheduling pieces. So a little bit more on, sort of Graphical Scheduler. It's the free application, as I mentioned, for the Business Central Cloud environment. And basically, I've actually mentioned all this, so I'm not actually going to talk about this anymore. But the key is you can, use it for production orders, or you can extend it to show almost anything you want on the system. So instead of talking about it more, I'm going to jump in and actually show you what that looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into Business Central, and I'm in a role center here, a scheduling role center, and one of the options, of course, is Graphical Scheduler. So we're going to jump in here. And I'm going to open that guy up. So we open up the Graphical Scheduler, and what it's doing is it's opened up my default view. So that's my default view that opens up. You can create as many views in the system as you like, which I'll show you in a moment. And on this view, I've actually customized it. So this is not what you see. If you install this, from AppSource and run it, you won't quite see what you're seeing here. But this is the standard Business Central, Cronus demo data, which is kind of weak. You would typically not name your machine centers as people, but this is what the data is. Now, on here, we can see the production orders. And if I click on one of these operations, we can sort of see the flow of that production order, and it highlights it, in this color, so you can kind of see all the different operations together. And I can hover over this, and it gives me details about, each operation and those sorts of things pretty easily. And I've also got in here, I've got this one here. You notice the color has changed. It's sort of gray and red, and that's because this production order happens to be late. So you can do things like set color rules. If it's late, I can turn it red, or you can trigger that color on effectively any field within the system. So if you've got custom fields in there or whatever, you want to say anything that's flagged as in progress is green, or whatever you want to do, that's just configuration. Okay, so the default is kind of this color, and away you go. Now I mentioned the drag and drop as well. So on this, let's say it's 9 o'clock here. I don't want to start this at 9, because it's after 9. I'm going to start this now at 10 o'clock on the same. I can move it to a different work center or machine center, but I'm just going to drop it now. And when I do that, what it does is it initiates the standard Business Central scheduling capabilities. It's just like if I went into the routing and changed that date and time, it reschedules all the other operations accordingly. Now, the typical question is usually, well, if I change this, is it going to change all the other production orders? Or maybe this is a subcomponent, will it change the finished good? And the answer is no, it won't. And that's because what we're doing is we're initiating the standard Business Central scheduling logic. The free Graphical Scheduler is a drag and drop scheduler, but it's working on one production order at a time. It's not looking holistically at what's going on in the facility and scheduling around that. But it does allow you very nicely to grab these things, move them around, do whatever you like. And you notice there's some text in here, and the pop-up text and everything else. I'll show you how you can set that in a sec. And up here, what we've got, this is in the production order. This is a bar showing the loading on this assembly department. And you can see here we've got a 66% load on that, effective and available, all that kind of stuff. And that kind of shows us our loading, sort of by day on this particular work center. And that, again, is not there by default. I added that in. So let's actually see how you can set up one of these views. Oh, actually, before I go into the view, I'll just mention a bunch of stuff. If I've got this selected, I can hit details. It'll open up that production order, and I can see all the details about the production order. I can come in here, and if I want to see the work center calendar or any of that kind of stuff, the loading for the work center that I'm on, those sorts of things, that's all here. Very easy to navigate and get to the information you need. So I come in here, I'm seeing everything visually, and now I want to drill down into the more detailed data. I can select this and then maybe go out and check the routing for this particular thing, or the serial numbers associated with it, or whatever happened, whatever I happen to have associated with that production. So it makes it very easy to start from a visual view of things and drill down into any details you see. Now, to set up that visualization, what we do is we use these things called views. And I've got a few views in this one defined, and this is the default one that we're on. So let's actually just quickly have a look at that. We'll go in here and you name the view, and maybe I want to make these things taller. I want to make them 35 pixels tall instead of 30. There's a whole bunch of other settings you can set there. I won't bother going into all the details, but you've got a lot of control over this. Down here, I've set up a specific starting point for when it loads, but normally it'll try and adjust to the production orders you have scheduled and show you the most reasonable view, the most practical view that you start with as far as dates and times and zoom. But down here is the important bit. This is what we're actually showing on that chart. So the default every time you create a new view is it brings in the production orders in. But you can come in here, you notice this just says released. Well, I can add whatever filter I like. If I want to see firm planned and released, I can show both of those on the chart at the same time. And I can come in and change the colors. So the firm planned orders can be a different color than the released orders or something like that. And I can toggle between that. So when I go back to the chart, if I've said, yeah, I only want to show, or I want to show all production orders, but on the chart, I want to toggle between firm planned and released, I can do that right on the graphical scheduler itself. Okay, and here's where we have those tooltips. So if you want to change the information that's displayed on the chart, again, you have full control of that. This one's very simple. It shows me the production order number and the description, but I could come in here and add in any field I like onto this view, right? So anything that you may want to show on the screen is entirely possible. Okay, and again, this is all configuration. So I can come in, add all this stuff in, and away I go. Now down below, what we've got here is we've got the color rules, where I can say, hey, you know what? If it's late, I'm going to make the text red and the background silver. So you can again set up any color rules that you like here to show different colors, and this applies to whatever sort of information we're showing on the chart. So if I wanted to say, hey, if my load percentage is greater than 50%, I want to change the color, I can come in here and add another color rule very easily because it's just a filter, and away I go. Okay. Now, let's say I wanted to add in additional information. Maybe I want to add in, when my purchase orders are coming in or something like that. What you can do, or I want to create a brand new view from scratch, I can come in here, hit this add data source, and these are all the things that you can add onto the graphical scheduler. So we've got the sort of the standard ones. We've got, production orders. We've got, all that kind of stuff. This is the loading, the work center load that I had already added. All of these different things that are there by default, even things like warehouse picks. I want to see, the schedule for picking as compared to my production. Well, I can plug that in. Or quality inspections. When are my quality inspections scheduled related to production? Or maybe I want to show quality inspector assignments on a calendar view instead of a Gantt chart view. And the one up at the top here is the handy one, because what this allows you to do is add in any table within Business Central into that chart, which means that could be custom tables, or if there's something that we haven't added in here as sort of a default configuration, I can come in here, I won't go through the whole thing, but I can come in here and say, you know what, I want to add in any purchase orders, right? So I can come in here and say, I'm going to add purchase orders, and I want to, show it by number and all that kind of stuff. And I could actually plot those purchase orders on the same chart as my production or my work center loading or my warehouse receipts or whatever it happens to be, right? So you can come in here and add any table you like into that view. Now I'm going to delete that because I didn't really configure it properly, but that's okay. You get the general idea. Now, I'm going to show you some additional views in a bit here. But basically, that's the kind of control you have, right? So you can come in there, and you notice I increased the size to 35, so it made these a little taller, but I didn't really make any other changes on here. That's kind of the control you have. Now, on the dates and zoom, you have a couple of other things. You can come in, if I had zoomed a document, it'll filter just down to the production order or job or assembly order or whatever I have selected. And I can also zoom in and out or manually change the view that we're looking at. So right now we're looking at hour and day, but if I want to see it on a broader weekly basis or monthly basis, those sorts of things, I can change those views. Or maybe I want to see that calendar view. Calendar view isn't really good for production, but there's lots of data you may want to show more like an Outlook calendar view. I'm just going to change it to calendar view. Like I said, production, it doesn't really make sense. But, I can show this calendar view and I can move stuff around. I can drag and drop in the calendar view and it works just like Outlook. And this could be, again, my warehouse picks potentially, or purchase orders or dock schedule or whatever you want to do. And you could use it like this instead. Okay. All right. So those are some of the, sort of high level features of the graphical scheduler. Again, nice visualization. You can see what's going on. I can drag and drop. I can zoom in, I can zoom out, I can, move between periods, all that kind of stuff. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple to use. And you fire it up. The default is it's going to show all your production orders, but then you could go in there, change your view to have different text, different colors, all of those sorts of things, and make it your own and create as many of those views as you like. Okay, so now this is great. This is very basic. Business Central demo data. It's showing me a few production orders. They're kind of nicely done already. They're kind of scheduled appropriately and those sorts of things. And, this is a usable thing. I can come in here and use this to manage my schedule. But that's not always the case. If I've got a whole bunch of production orders in the system, then we start seeing a slightly different view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into another company here where I've got a whole bunch of production orders that have been scheduled from a forecast. So I'm going to go into the graphical scheduler again here. And because it came from a forecast, the due date is effectively the same on all of these production orders. And so what we end up seeing, and well, first thing you'll see is I've got that same sort of load view that I added in here. And I've just changed the colors. So it's kind of this orange color if it's not loaded, it's blue if it's between, I don't know, 25 and 75 or something like that. And red if it's overloaded. So I've added this loading view in here and changed the colors. Actually, while I'm here, I'll just give you an example. So these are some of the views that I've created, right? So I've got job tasks, job planning lines, I've got assembly orders in there, all sorts of things that I can look at. But one of the ones I added was this work center loading view. I'm just going to show you that real quick, just to show you a little bit of the flexibility that you have with the graphical scheduler. So when I open that up, I'm not showing any production orders. All I'm doing is showing the work center loading, in this case by day. And this gives me a little load chart to see what's going on in that work center. And I can select one, hit details, and drill down into it and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and all that takes is a few seconds and I can build up this type of view in the system. And if I want to see, sort of a weekly load chart, I can go in there and see it on a weekly basis, which isn't quite as interesting, but because I don't have a lot of production there, but you can do all of that kind of stuff. That's very simple to set up. Took like 30 seconds, and I've got a view here that gives me my work center loading in a nice graphical view. Anyway, what I wanted to actually show you is go back into my default view, which actually shows me my production orders. And what I wanted to point out is the fact that, the schedule that Business Central has generated is not very good, right? Let's go into sort of the day and week view here. It's not very good. It's coming in and it's saying, on Friday, schedule everything Friday afternoon, right? Because that's what came in from the forecast. those are the due dates that were set based on the forecast, or somebody on a Friday afternoon entering a bunch of orders in and forgetting to change the shipment date or whatever they're doing. And now I've got a production schedule that is not going to work. This is the default production schedule that Business Central has generated. And what you do, if you just want to use the graphical scheduler, no problem. I come in here, say it's scheduled on this laser cutter work center, but I actually wanted to run on my, my 4-foot laser cutter. I'm just going to drag and drop that over here, and I'm going to put that guy there, and it's going to use the Business Central logic to reschedule it. And then I'm going to grab another guy, and I'm going to move him, and so on and so forth. So I could spend my afternoon doing that, moving things around and making sure this schedule is going to work for me when I send it out to the shop floor. Because I don't want to send this. I mean, you could. This gives you a rough order of go. Like, I know, these are the production orders I need to do, and maybe this is the sequence I'm going to do them in. But that's not scheduling. That's just dumping a bunch of stuff out to the shop floor and saying, hey, you guys figure out how you're going to execute this. That's not going to work well. What I guarantee will happen is you'll end up with pallets full of WIP everywhere because everybody's doing things in the wrong order, and all sorts of weird stuff happens. So you don't really want to use a schedule like this. You either want to use the graphical scheduler to drag and drop these things and move them around, or better yet, we want the system to actually give us a schedule that we can use. Like, these are computers, they should be capable of crunching the numbers better than we can sit here dragging and dropping. So what you really want to do is come in here and hit this generate production schedule button. And when we do that, what it's going to do is it's going to say, when do you want to start? And I forget when all my demo data is. I think it's there. So I'm going to say, starting tomorrow at 8 a.m., give me a schedule for, say, the next 30 days. Actually, I think, I can't remember what my demo data is. Anyway, we'll just say, 8 a.m. tomorrow. We'll pretend this is tomorrow. Give me a 30-day schedule, and then I can filter what kind of production orders I'm scheduling and all that. Normally, this is all blank, and I'm done. Like, there's a bunch of options you can set here, like global lead time. I'll talk about that in a sec. But all I have to do is say, tomorrow at 8 a.m., tell me what my schedule looks like. Hit the generate schedule button. And what it's doing now is it's taking all those production orders that you saw previously, crunching the numbers, and I've got 60-ish production orders in the system, so it takes about 20 seconds. It really, the length of time it takes depends on the number of operations you have and the number of constraints you have. So it could be anywhere from a minute to several minutes to run a schedule. It's still way faster than built-in MRP. And what it's done is it's come in, it's generated a schedule. Here's a list of all the schedules I've had since the beginning of time. And these are scenarios. So it's telling me, hey, I had 31 late orders based on the way things are set up now, 20 early and 10 on time. And I can drill down and see which orders are going to be late, all that kind of stuff. And what this gives us the ability to do now is, again, I can drill down and get all the details about the schedule at this point. But I can say, and that's too many late orders. Maybe I want to change the priorities on these orders, because now we have something called a priority field that we can set to pull late production orders forward. Or I could say, hey, I want to run a second shift, or I want to outsource some of this stuff. What's that going to do to my schedule? I can rerun it and then compare the results of that next scenario to this one. And if I want to look at it visually, I can simply come in here, hit this button, and again, it opens up the graphical scheduler here. But now what it's showing us is the suggested schedule for all of that data. So I'm just going to change the zoom here. So here's my suggested schedule. Starting again tomorrow at 8 a.m. This is my suggested schedule. This is using the same data you saw before, where everything was piled up on that laser cutter work center on Friday afternoon. Well, you can see what it's done now. It's taken all those and it automatically moved them to the best machine to run that on. And that's important. It's choosing the best machine automatically. And it does that based on rules that you set up in the system. Very simple. It level loads everything by default. If these two machines are equivalent, that's fine. But it can also say, I have preferred machines because they're less expensive to run or they're faster or whatever. But I also have alternate machines you can use if my preferred machine isn't good. So you'll see here, I've got this short bracket and I've got some long brackets. And the long brackets always want to run on this particular machine here, this 10-foot. But sooner or later, this 10-foot is going to get overloaded. And what it's going to do is it's going to then choose an alternate machine that's a much larger machine, takes longer to run, is more expensive to run and everything else, but it selected that machine instead of my preferred machine because it resulted in a better schedule. So it looks at tens of thousands of combinations of schedule every time you run this, and it picks the best one based on the criteria you've set. And it's all automatic and took like 20 seconds. So it probably did do probably a few 100,000 evaluations on these production orders to come up with the schedule in about 20 seconds. And it is something I can actually send to the shop floor and have them execute. A couple other quick notes here. This purple is the setup time and the green is the runtime. So what that means is we can also do things like eliminate setup time. Based on how we schedule, we can schedule similar items together to eliminate that changeover time, right? So whether it's color or tooling or whatever, we can eliminate all or part of that setup time based on how we sequence those items that you're scheduling. Okay? And speaking of sequencing, if I go down here, down to these couple work centers, I've got, I'm building battery boxes obviously in this, and I've got two material types. I've got aluminum and I've got stainless steel. And I've set it up so that it sequences the schedule based on my material type. So here it's got AL, aluminum, aluminum, and here it switches over to stainless steel, then it does all my stainless steel. And same thing on this other guy here. We do all of my aluminum first, and then we do my stainless steel. So you can sequence on color, any part attribute, temperature, it doesn't really matter. Anything you like, you can control the sequencing of that schedule, again, to eliminate setup time and things like that, all automatically. Now, that's all cool. It's all finite capacity, won't overload my work centers, chooses the best machine to run it on. I don't have to drag and drop or anything like that. But hey, if I do want to drag and drop, sure, I can go ahead and move these things around. If I don't agree with the computer schedule, I can come in here and move stuff around to my heart's content, and it'll apply that change automatically. But again, so it's done the finite capacity scheduling, shows the right stuff. The other thing it does is it will limit when we can execute those production orders based on constraints you define. So this is a good example on the welding side here. I've got two welding booths and I'm running one production order in each, right? Because I've got the capacity here. So let's run those production orders. Except right here at 4 p.m., one of my welders goes home. So at the shift change, I now only have one welder available. And you'll see the system is only scheduling one production order at a time. And I've got it alternating work centers here because that'll help the material handlers move. And anyway, it doesn't matter. We can schedule it all in one work center or split up like I've done. And so what that is that's a labor constraint. We're preventing you from scheduling work that you can't realistically do. We can also do that on material, tooling, any other attribute like price of electricity if you want. We can constrain how you schedule those production orders based on any of that. So in other words, we're not going to schedule a production order to get done if you don't have the material for it, or not to get done, to get started until you have the material for it. So it'll look at incoming POs, it'll look at your lead times that you've set up for that item, all of that kind of stuff to determine when it can realistically start production on that product, right? So instead of having to run the shortage list before you release a production order and manually figure all that stuff out, this system is going to automatically schedule things appropriately for you based on your constraints and your rules and everything else. Okay? But again, this is just in the graphical scheduler, so all the same tools that I have. If I'm manually dragging and dropping, I have here. Ideally, you'll never use this. You'll have it in the job queue. It'll run the schedule, commit it to Business Central, and you go out and you execute to that particular schedule. But if you do want to look at it and drag and drop and manipulate it yourself, you have the ability to do that as well. So anyway, once I reviewed this and I'm happy with the schedule, you just commit it, and then that's going to update your published schedule, which is your standard production orders, and you're good to go. And then you can go back in anytime, look at that published schedule, drag and drop, do whatever the heck you want with that, all using the graphical scheduler, right? So if I committed that schedule, my standard production order view would now show me that new schedule that I just finished committing. We wouldn't see everything scheduled like this. We'd actually see the schedule that the system automatically generated. All right. So that's basically it for the scheduling. There's a few other little things here, but the key, just to remind you, if you're just using the free graphical scheduler and you don't want the automated production scheduling, you've got a ton of stuff you can do. You can create all of these different views, all that kind of stuff. If you're using Quality Inspector or Quality Inspector product, or you're using Warehouse Picks, it also installs some views for those as well. So actually, I'll briefly talk about the Warehouse Picks just in case anybody's using that. So I'm just going to bring up the Warehouse Picks list here. And when we come in here, you see this thing called Pick Assignments. The graphical scheduler adds that in. So if you're using Warehouse Picks, this automatically gets added in. You can open that up. And guess what? This is just a view on the graphical scheduler that shows me all my warehouse picks, all my warehouse employees, and I can drag and drop these picks to a specific person, and that assigns it to that person and to that date and time that I want to do it. And there's a bunch of stuff you can set up here, like these pick estimates. You can say every pick, takes 10 minutes by default, and every line takes 1 minute to pick. And what it'll do is it'll actually come in and look at the data in the system and automatically generate what it thinks it takes you to actually execute picks. And what that does is this box gets bigger based on, you see it says the estimated pick time there is 1 hour and 33 minutes. It's calculated that out based on the size of that pick. And then I can take that, and again, if I want to move that over to me and say he's got to pick it on Monday, it'll actually assign that pick and set the schedule on that pick to be Monday at that time. Okay. So anyway, just another little example of how you can use that graphical schedule. And to do something like that, let's say you had your own customization in Business Central and you'd like some sort of visualization that you can drag and drop or whatever. Guess what? You can do that with a graphical scheduler. We've got lots of code examples and things like that available for you. Most of the time, there's no coding required. It's just configuration. And you can use it with your own customizations, if you're a partner with your own products, whatever you like. That scheduler is yours, free to use. You don't even have to tell us you're using it. You just go to town and we're done. All right, so that's sort of the overview here. Now, what's it going to cost you? Well, again, the graphical scheduler is free. It applies to cloud Business Central only. If you are on-prem and you have any of our other products, we'll supply you with the graphical scheduler for free as well. But you do have to have a subscription for one of the other products, and then you can get a graphical scheduler as well. MX APS, I mentioned, it's available for nav as well, but we avoid that. You're probably better off just upgrading to Business Central and getting the Business Central version, but it's available for on-premises or cloud. If you want to try it out, sometimes the configuration doesn't work first try, but normally you can go in, install from AppSource, run the setup wizard, hit the button, and you'll get a decent schedule if your routings are in decent shape. If your routings aren't in good shape or they're not configured the way we expect, you might not get a schedule and you might need to talk to us and we can help you get things going. But you can install it and give it a try if you like. Just be aware that the routings aren't set up the way we prefer. In other words, work centers and machine centers, and you have appropriate run times and setup times. If you've got all that, the thing will just work out of the box. Otherwise, get a hold of us and we can work with you to sort of let you know what you need to do or figure out if it's going to work for you at all. All right, now the way it's priced, after you try the trial and go, wow, this thing's awesome, I need it, it's actually quite inexpensive. So you can get started for, I think it's about $150 a month, unless if you do an annual or a 3-year subscription on that. And everything I showed you will effectively work in that. So it's based on the number of production orders that you have in the system or that you schedule at a single time. So if you've got 100 orders out on the shop floor at any given time, and you try and schedule 101, it's going to schedule, and sorry, you're licensed for 100 production orders, it's going to schedule 100 production orders. It's not going to schedule that 101st or 102nd production order. So that's how it's licensed. And again, talk to your partner. They'll be able to get you pricing on the different tiers of scheduling volumes. So I think they're at like 75 production orders, 200 production orders, 500, something like that. There's a bunch of tiers you can use, and that'll get you your pricing. With that, if you have any other questions for now, you can go to Scheduler for Dynamics or iwx.app or mxaps.com. But if you go to our website, you'll be able to go through and see all of the different tools available for manufacturing and specifically scheduling as well. And if you have any questions there, just use the contact option on the website, and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you. All right. Thanks, everyone, for attending. I hope you have a good rest of the week, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more great content, and remember to hit that bell icon to stay updated. See you in the next video.